And we are live. So, once again, the revitalized top 10 fantasy movie list is here to be completed. It's not without its fair share of flubs. This was an episode I think that we began somewhere around the second week in December. And as we've talked about many times, I think we talked about it all the way through the first week returning in January. It just the whole thing fell apart and came together several times and in many different forms. But we're finally getting back with our second half of the top 10 list. I am the American Werewolf. I've got John, Mr. Fantasy. I call him Dear Mr. Fantasy, Alvarez. And we've got, once again, back with us, I think for the first time in the new year, Brom Bones is in the house tonight. So it's always good to have him back in the house.
Yep.
This is episode 81 of An American Werewolf in New Jersey.
Geez.
Yeah, I was just talking to Bill, or maybe it was last week when we were doing I Trapped the Devil, and I think it was like episode 78 or 79 or something like that. Yeah. And I was saying that, Bill was there for episode 2.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
This was back, and Ryan, you'll remember this. I think you jumped in somewhere around 5 or something like that.
Yeah, Ravenous was like 5, I think.
Yeah. And this was back when we were uploading Zoom calls.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were doing Zoom calls and recording them and then uploading them every Saturday. And, we've made a couple of steps from there. Hold on a second. We've got Fred Weedow. Fred Weedow is in the house. What's happening? My man Fred. Swinging Fred Weedow is in the house, and he's saying, we're looking good here.
Swinging.
Thank you, brother. Always good to see you. Yeah. Always cool. When I came back, Todd ended up connecting me to Fred, and we ended up getting together a couple of times since I've been back. So it's been good to be in touch with old Fred again. So are we ready? Shall we get it going?
Let's do it.
Boogie Boogie.
The theme music for American Werewolf is traffic.
You cut it down a little bit there.
Well, you know what's happened. I figure it's time for amateur hour to end. So inserting names, images, and likenesses that I don't have permission to use.
That's true.
Should not be part of an introduction.
That makes sense.
And maybe less is more. So we're just keeping it simple with the intro, and I think I could stick with this for a while. It's all good.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Yeah.
So here we are, 5 through 1. Now, I thought we should get right to it. I figured we'd go round robin. I'll start with John.
All right.
That's okay. And then we'll go with Ryan. And then we will go with myself. And if that works out okay for you guys, I'm here with number 5. Your number 5 favorite fantasy movie. John, what do you got for me?
Well, although it's number 5, there can be only one.
That's very true.
Oh, boy.
All right. We've got some Highlander, Mr. McLeod there. All right.
There it is.
When I saw this movie for the first time, I actually, for a long time, I haven't done this. I saw it in a movie theater and cheered at one point in time. And it was for the villain. It was in the church going after the nuns. Yeah.
Clancy Brown, man.
I just found that hysterically funny. I think this is a fantastic fantasy film, not just because it works in the whole fantasy aspect about these are partially godlike figures, they're battling, it put it in a modern setting. And I really dug that a lot. I always thought that was cool because you didn't have to go to a far-off fantasy land and watch them fight in fields or, or things like that. I really thought that wrapped it in. And the thing about it is how some of the people, especially in our reality, accepted what was going on type deal. McLeod's secretary, who was like about the fourth or fifth one. The meteorologist who figured out that the sword was from something else and from somewhere, once they realized what was going on, they just took it. And I'm sorry, man. Sean Connery.
Oh, yeah. That's
Ramirez.
Yeah.
Spanish man.
Yeah.
He was great. I'm sorry. He was fantastic.
I'm Spanish.
Yeah.
We all
you
broke
have
up.
the manners of a goat.
Yeah.
But it's amazing because, I remember watching it. It was one of the times that when, this is way back when in the dinosaur age, when it was VHS tapes.
Oh, yeah.
My father, who was into science fiction and science fantasy, Paul and I bought it to him. On a VHS, said, watch this. It got to be such a part of our lives. My one nephew, Will, was playing with my other nephew, Greg, and they were like about 4 years old. And Will was putting together something with Legos, and Greg took it and said, "Oh," and started playing with it. Will took the rest of the Legos, made a sword, stood up and went, "There can be only one," and smacked him in the head. And that's when we were like, okay, we watched this movie too much.
Maybe dial it back a bit. Yeah. This was, this movie came out not long after you and I met, John.
Yeah.
And so I think I ended up watching it either in your company or in Paul's company. It's just a ton of fun. It was my first introduction to Christopher Lambert. It was my first Lambert. Okay. My first introduction to Clancy Brown.
Yes.
Who just, played it to the hilt, man. What a villain.
Clancy Brown is legendary, man. I mean,
Great stuff.
Yeah.
And it was like low budget. It wasn't all, there was no big CGIs or what they would call CGIs back in that day.
No, this wasn't a James Cameron movie. No.
Yeah, but it was just like, oh my God, what a great film.
Yeah.
When you were watching it.
Yeah. Well, it's
funny.
My brother was into them. My brother was into that first movie. I don't think I saw the first one. I saw one of the sequels. I forget which one. But I remember thinking, what is this? It was just so different, And I can't remember which one I saw. But it was really an original concept. That's what I liked about the ones I saw. Yeah.
And then they later went on with the television series.
Yeah.
With Duncan MacLeod. I never watched it, but
and they made the crossover movie.
Yeah.
With Lambert and with Connor and Duncan. Yeah.
And it was a shame because the series, when it came out, it was the same nephew who hit my other nephew with the Legos. Will.
Oh, jeez.
No, when he said there's a series on about it, I said, yeah, sure. We sat down, I watched it. I said, it translated well to a TV series.
Okay.
I mean, because they didn't have to. Everybody was fighting, so it was more of like these godlike figures running around.
Yeah, you'd have to figure there'd be, more than their fair share of battles and somebody else battling somebody else. It didn't have to be MacLeod every time.
Yeah.
So.
And the other thing about
that works.
There was a sense of humor in it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I like. All right, I'm done.
And Blister and Soundtrack by Queen.
True.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Blister and Soundtrack by Queen. Yeah. Special kind of magic. It was called. That's the name of the album.
Okay. Yeah.
You ever saw the video to the one song, "We Are the Princes of the Universe"?
Yeah.
Freddie Mercury singing, and Conor McLeod comes on with the sword, and Freddie's fighting him with his mic stand. The way that's how it was great. It was very fun.
I remember when the Bohemian Rhapsody movie came out 3-4 years ago or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I was living overseas. We went to see a Queen tribute band. And they actually did, because that way it was repopularized. Suddenly Freddie Mercury was back on top again. And the band was back on top again. And they actually played 2 songs, like Who Wants to Live Forever
There you go.
And the one Princes of the Universe, they did 2 of the songs from Highlander, and I was like, okay, because that's a real test for a singer to try to do those songs from Mercury, and he actually did a passable job. So I was like, all right,
Okay.
Yeah.
all right. So number 5, Ryan, what do you got for us?
The very underrated classic that's very close to my heart because I absolutely love this film, Willow.
Willow.
Nice.
Willow is just such a it's George Lucas's parable about the little man sticking it to the big man, literally. But it's such a wonderful movie. It's a lot of fun. I remember when it came out, and I remember seeing the previews, and I'm like, this looks so cool. I mean, it just looks so cool. They showed like the 2-headed dragon in the preview, and it's got its dark moments,
Yes, it is.
It's got its dark moments. I absolutely love Jean Marsh as Bavmorda in that, as the evil queen. She's absolutely fantastic. And of course, this is the movie that, for me, that introduced me to Val Kilmer.
There you go.
Okay.
And as Mad Mardigan, he's a riot, and he's so great every time he's on screen. And it's a great balance between a complete buffoon and a heroic warrior. He has his moments where he can do both, and at the end finally comes out as a hero, going from this selfish kind of Han Solo type character into somebody who actually cares about the fate of their world. And Warwick Davis is one of the hardest working people in movies. He's everywhere. I think this was his first starring role, where you saw his face. He is just he's in everything. He's everywhere. He's been in every Star Wars movie since Return of the Jedi. At 11 years old, he played Wicket the Ewok. That was his first role. He's been in those silly Leprechaun movies. He's been in all the Harry Potter movies. He is probably the hardest working little person, if you can use that term. I think he kind of paved the way for guys like Peter Dinklage.
I agree.
Later on, and he's still working today. But I think his Willow's his best work.
Oh, yeah.
The sets, it's exactly what high fantasy, dark high fantasy should be. It's what I think of when I think of that stuff with the big castles and General Kale, Pat Roach with that skull mask is just awesome. I mean, it's really just such a well done movie. And when it came out, it just got, I think it's had a cult following since it came out, but I think it came out that year that the big year, what was it, 88 or something like that, where you had all those big movies Lethal Weapon or Die Hard or some of those, and it kind of got lost in the shuffle. But
there were a lot of those fantasy type, we talked about Legend, or we talked about Princess Bride, or we talked about Lady Hawk, and these sorts of things. So I think sometimes they all get smudged together.
Yeah, but this is such a unique movie. And some people say, it's a ripoff of The Hobbit, but it's really not.
I don't think I've ever seen it, actually.
It is and it isn't, but it's a great movie.
It's the first big budget movie that Ron Howard directed.
Okay.
Ron Howard directed that film, and when his name came up in the credits, I was like, "Wait, what?" Because you weren't expecting that.
As a director.
Because he did, that was his first really big budget, and I mean, these were big battle scenes.
Oh yeah, and they're awesome.
There are two guys who are about this tall in the movie who are a riot.
The Brownies. Kevin Pollak is one of them. Yeah.
I mean, it's really, really funny.
It is.
And it reminded me a lot of God, it just popped in my head. It was like if Princess Bride had a more serious tone to it with the fantasy.
Yeah. Okay, I can see that.
It wasn't a romance, it was the fantasy.
Well, you know, I love to hate on the Princess Bride. I just, it's like one of my great pastimes in life, hating on that. But
I gave you your opportunity.
I appreciate that. Thank you. There was an opening there. Hold on a second. We got a couple of comments. Okay. We got Mike Hannell. Mr. Hannell is a friend of mine. He's dropped in on the show first time. Thank you for dropping in. He got in here in time for a Highlander mention. I didn't want him to think that we were blowing him off. And then Mario Jacobo is here, and he's saying, "Mr. Mike, we need you back." But okay, yeah. Let's just keep going. I didn't see that. No, I didn't see that at all. No,
but yeah, I mean, it's really, again, this movie is just it's really just it's such a fun movie to watch, and I have the DVD, and I hadn't seen it in like years.
Did you watch it for this?
I watched it again like last year, and I was just like, man, it's so much fun. It's such just a cool movie. The battle scenes are awesome. It's just it's just a lot of fun.
And Val Kilmer can handle a sword.
Oh yeah,
this was skinny Val Kilmer, in shape. Yeah. He was doing some sword play. And what to say? Jack Sparrow better watch his ass, because he was brilliant with the sword.
Oh,
he was great with it.
And we can't forget his future ex-wife in that, Joanne Wally, as Saoirse.
Wally was in it. Yeah,
she was great. Yeah.
She's always
long great. Red hair lock. That was enough.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
she's always great.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, that brings us to me and my number 5, and for me, numero cinco, and was just mentioned by John a few seconds ago, is the worst pirate you've ever seen, Captain Jack Sparrow, and Pirates of the Caribbean: The Curse of the Black Pearl. Now, I like all of these movies.
Yeah,
I like all of these movies, but the introduction of the whole pirate narrative was something completely new, or something that really hadn't been touched on for so long that, it might as well have been new. And they got Johnny Depp, where he really starts to veer off from what we had known previously, the small independent Jim Jarmusch, and then working for Polanski a couple of times, and there's Burton over here and a couple of things, and then he just starts to veer off into this comic section, which over time I got tired of. I'd like to see him go back to more independent, some of the blockbusters. But I have to say, he hit this movie out of the park.
Oh yeah.
Jeffrey Rush as Captain Barbossa was just fantastic. Keira Knightley was great. Orlando Bloom as Will.
Lord of the Rings.
All the small crew members all the different ships were just fantastic. It was fun. It was lighthearted. It had this sort of supernatural thing going on, with the one crew being completely dead, which you didn't kind of understand at first.
Well, they weren't actually dead. They were just cursed.
They were cursed. Yeah.
Well, and it's funny because you know what? I think Disney took a big gamble on that because it was a movie based on a ride, and I've been on the ride, and but they took a huge gamble, but it worked, man. They did it right, and they revitalized the pirate genre.
Yeah. Oh yeah. When he gets hold on, John, just real quick, and then I'll turn it over to you guys. When he first arrives on that scene,
on that sinking,
and the ship is coming in, and it's slowly sinking, and he makes it just in time to step off onto the pier.
It's a great introduction.
And then that British guy's like, wait a minute, what the hell are you doing? You can't do that. And he bribes him real quick. And that one little kid is like right next to him, and his eyes pop up when he offers the bribe. Was just hysterical to me. Doing that whole Keith Richards, spacey kind of, kind of thing.
Yeah. And then they furthered the joke by having Keith Richards play his dad, which was funny.
Yeah.
When I saw this movie in the movie theater only because at the time, as a side gig from working at Cape May Stage for a week, and we wrote a pirate play in Cape May Stage in the 90s called The Trial of Blackbeard the Pirate, because Cape May had all this folklore about piracy. I took what I wrote and actually on a pay attention to us, we're doing a show over here gig. I went on a nature cruise with 2 other guys that had a double wheel paddle boat. Well, I start doing all my bits and all the songs and everybody's enjoying it. The captain hired me to do a pirate. I went out on our nature cruise. I picked on everybody on the way out. When the bridge had to go up, I had everybody waving traffic and, shit like that, and had a great time. Left it, came back to it, and these kids were walking up to me saying, "Do you know Jack Sparrow?" And I didn't know what they were talking about. And the guy goes, "It's the movie that came out." I went with my brother, and we saw that movie. I'm sorry. When you were talking about him coming off the boat.
Right, yeah.
I'm like, I officially love this movie.
Yeah.
This was summertime popcorn fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jumped around as fast as we could.
Yeah.
Jeffrey Rush, when he came towards, what's her name?
Keira
Knightley, and said, "I hope you believe in ghost stories. You're in one."
Yeah.
The movie theater screamed because you weren't expecting this at all.
Yeah.
And my favorite line in the movie is when he fights Orlando Bloom in the sword factory, and he cheats. Yeah. And Orlando Bloom goes, "You cheated." I went, "Pirate."
Yeah.
And I think I howled for the rest of that summer. I worked in the Jack Sparrow joke, politely saying, "Hello," because the captain called me Captain Long John Belushi. And when I was sitting there, and I go, "I'm here to tell you about piracy. Now, ladies, if you're looking for Johnny Depp, you got on the wrong boat." And every husband broke out laughing. And I'm like, there you go. But that was the point. That really, for me, I went from making $50 in tips every day to making, literally, no joke intended, I was making almost $200 a day.
Wow.
I had to split it with the wait staff because they weren't getting as many tips as I was. But it was, thank you, Johnny Depp.
Yeah. Well, and you know what?
It was great. It was fun. And it was like, well timed. And at the very end, when you just see him sail off into the sunset.
Yeah.
Let's see that. Let's see that horizon. Yeah.
Let's see that horizon. You could have ended it there.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, the sequels were there and everything, but you could have ended it there, and that movie would still be popular. Because it's like Raiders of the Lost Ark, that type of adventure.
And it made Jack Sparrow an iconic cultural figure in pop culture. I mean, he's as well known as Indy or Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
I mean, Jack Sparrow, that's it put him on the map. But yeah, man, that movie, I saw it in the theater.
They changed the ride to put Jack Sparrow on the
they
ride.
did. And they put Barbossa in there too. Yeah.
Well, what ended up happening was, the last thing that we had in reference to any sort of pirate movie, I think, was that movie Cutthroat Island.
Oh yeah. Ooh,
remember that? It was like a huge catastrophe. Remember with like Matthew Modine,
Gina Davis's career.
And Gina Davis, and it was I think the Critical Drinker made a production hell video of that.
Yeah.
About like how bad it was. He has this subsection called Production Hell, and he goes through like all the details. So I mean, this was just virgin territory that no one had explored, and these guys just really went for it and hit it out of the park. And that's my number 5.
Okay.
Congratulations, dude.
All right.
That
brings us to number 4.
Number 4.
John, what do you got for us? Number 4.
Number 4. My not introduction to the Monty Python crew at all, but to the spin-offs, Time Bandits.
Oh, boy. What
Harry
a
Gilliam.
movie. What a movie.
Harry Gilliam and practically everybody and their grandmother who was acting over in Europe at the time. I fell in love with this movie. I actually went and
Yeah.
saw this movie on a date, and it was a double date. And we're sitting in a movie theater and we're watching it, and myself and the female of the other date were enjoying ourselves, and the other two wanted to leave. And both of us at the same time said, well, if you want to go ahead. And I watched it with the other woman, and we actually started dating afterwards. But it was funny. It was sanctimonious at times. It was a little picking on religion with God and what God was and the devil.
Well, that's Terry Gilliam. Yeah.
It was produced by George Harrison.
Yep.
I mean, it had everybody from John Cleese to Sean Connery.
Yep.
In the movie. And
yeah,
there were times that it was just funny, and there was times it was serious and scary. And I'm going, oh my God, and it was a wonderful concept when they just basically said, when God said he was going to create the world in 6 days, he didn't give himself enough time. We had to do some of the work. We had to cover up the holes. I loved that. That was such a great idea. And it was also representing the kid who was a nerd, and all of a sudden he became the hero. He was going through all these, which was pretty much a traditional thing. One of the things I realized when I was picking out some of the fantasy stuff, it deals sometimes with younger children.
Yeah.
Because I think when I was a kid, that's when I was getting into this stuff. And to me, it made sense. I'm like, our world is boring compared to that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Tie Bandits actually nailed it for me. And what's his name? Christ. Who's the guy we were just talking about said played Bob Cratchit?
David Warner.
David Warner.
He was the devil.
Oh,
and
wow.
He had one of my favorite lines in that movie when he turned around and said to somebody who wanted to be tortured by the devil, he goes, it'll show how much he loves me. This guy had a masochistic thing. And eventually, at one point in time, when they make a deal, he goes, get rid of all your demons. And he snaps his fingers, and he looks at the one guy there, and he goes, David, it's time. Oh, thank you. Boom, it blows him up. They had dark humor. And then he looks, I'm a reasonable man. I mean, it was just dark humor and everything you could possibly want as an adult form of a fantasy. And very original, because he was not attacking, but poking fun at Holy Dogma.
Yeah,
the world
and
being 7 days.
They did that a lot, the Pythons. And now that movie, he used the little people actors in that too. He used Kenny Baker. Yep. I think Jack Purvis. There were a couple of them he used. Yeah, a lot of the go-to guys, He
gave them a shot to be the ones who took care of the shrubs.
Yeah.
I love that. God couldn't get that, so we took care of trees and shrubs. That was our job.
I never saw this. I was, I mean, since elementary school, I was never a fan of the Monty Python-esque type humor, but I know that a lot of people are. And so, those people that are rabid fans.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it's just something I never got into, but I understand why so many people, love and, adore these movies. So,
and
it came close to either this one, and I said if we ever do one about science fiction only, it was going to be this one was going to be in this one fantasy, and then Brazil was going to be in science fiction.
Oh, that's a weird movie.
Brazil was the second movie, and it's so bizarre.
My favorite Gilliam,
wonderful.
My favorite Terry Gilliam movie is The Adventures of Baron Munchausen. I love that movie.
And I left that off of this.
Yeah, I did too. I left that off of this.
Because to me, it was also folklore. They fell into the category of folklore, and I didn't want to, intertwine with that.
But Gilliam is such a he's such a unique director. I think of all the Pythons, he was definitely the one. If you saw his animation, he was definitely the one to become a director of all of them. And he takes so long to make movies because he's fiercely independent. He is fiercely independent. He doesn't wrangle with the studios. He's very there was that documentary about that Don Quixote movie he tried to make that never got made. It's called like Lost in La Mancha or something like that.
Johnny Depp was to play Don Quixote.
Yeah, yeah.
The documentary is narrated by Johnny Depp.
Yeah, he really is an interesting director.
If we ever do a thing on science fiction again, or like a list like this, I worked 2.5 weeks on 12 Monkeys.
I remember you saying that. Yeah.
I was on the set. I got to work with Bruce Willis,
Okay,
and Stowe, and all those people, and I saw Terry Gilliam, and my face just started smiling. And he smiled
cool.
back, and he got right up to me and he went, "Give me a minute, I'm working," and walked away.
That's cool.
But he was, he didn't yell at me or he didn't throw me off the stage.
No,
he smiled and acknowledged, "Give me a minute, I'm working." And
yeah, that's cool.
Did Terry Gilliam direct 12 Monkeys?
Yes, he did.
Oh, did he really? I only saw that once.
Yeah, Terry Gilliam.
Yeah, I saw it once.
That was a good fucking movie.
He does a fisheye lens in a lot of his movies that's rarely used anymore for camera taking. It gives a perspective kind of off kilter on the edges when you look at it. So if somebody is tripping or someone is like, oh my God, like he's being overwhelmed, but he'll use that lens to add to your feeling of confusion.
He did
really good
Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
He did
that. Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he used that fisheye lens in that. Yeah.
He's a wacky guy, man, but I like him as a director.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And those are two solid movies.
Yeah.
I'm finished.
All right, Ryan, what you got for us? Numero cuatro.
Okay, we're back on the Jack Sparrow train. My number 4 is Pirates of the Caribbean: Dead Man's Chest. That's my favorite.
Why is the rum always gone? Yes.
Yes. No, it's my favorite because it's scarier than the first one.
It is.
Because of the fantastic performance by Bill Nighy
as
Davy Jones.
Yeah.
And his crew are a lot scarier than Barbossa's guys.
Yeah.
And the Kraken is also those scenes.
Oh yeah, that's right.
The scenes where the Kraken attacks those ships, it's a lot darker when Will Turner, Orlando Bloom, finds that ship and the guy's face has been sucked off. He finds the survivors of that ship, and Davy Jones gives the guys a choice and all this stuff. It's a dark movie. But it has its funny elements. I absolutely love what they did with Commodore Norrington in that one, where he's just a drunken wash up, and he has to join up with Jack Sparrow just so he can get the heart and all that stuff. And another great villain in that is the East India Trade Company guy, Cutler Beckett. What a weasel, you know.
That guy always plays a weasel.
Yeah. But it's my favorite because it's just a lot scary, and the whole stuff with Bootstrap Bill and the
Stellan Skarsgård.
Yeah, the effects in that are great.
Yeah.
And it's a worthy sequel. I think it's really does a nice job to kind of push the story along. You could argue whether it was necessary or not, but all the money they made on the first one, they were definitely going to do another one. But sometimes middle chapter movies aren't that good, but this is one of those ones where I think it actually improves on the first one, and the first one is fantastic.
I think it adds to the fact it's like The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
Star Wars. Because I didn't like the third one of this. That wrapped up this story. It was okay, but compared to the first two, it was like they were like shooting at a higher level and going for something bigger. But yeah, I'm sorry. When you saw the Kraken, you just saw the one arm.
Yeah.
And it was in the distance, and I saw this in the movie theater, and everybody went, "Ooh!" And we saw it. We were on the the movie theater in Ocean City, right on the beach.
Yeah.
Somebody's going, "Mom, I don't want to go to the beach tomorrow."
Yeah.
This little
and I like that they kept the Kraken. You never really saw what it looked like. You only saw the tentacles and then the mouth at the end when Jack runs into it. But you never really see it clearly until the third movie when it's dead. But just that Bill Nighy makes that movie. Yeah. Bill Nighy's fantastic anyway. And when I with that, and if you could go into that movie like thinking Davy Jones looks funny with his tentacle, but he is not a funny character at all. I mean, they could have totally went comedy with that, but he is not. He is a menacing,
he's a monster
guy. Yeah,
he's cruel. Yeah, I mean, they flog Will Turner. He makes his own father flog him. What really got me, the battle with the Kraken.
Yeah.
The battle with the Kraken is just fucking fantastic in that movie. Yeah. I mean, they're really going at it. They're doing like everything that they possibly can.
Yeah.
While Johnny Depp, I can't. Jack Sparrow is trying to get away. You know, and then he comes back, and I remember the first time he walked into the mouth of the Kraken, and I'm like, did that just fucking happen? Like, did he just die?
Yep.
Like, what the hell is that? You know, and then you get Keira Knightley. She she double crosses him and chains him to the to the wall. You know, so he can't get away. You know, and then I hate to do this, but then the big reveal at the end when Barbossa comes back. You know, and he eats that apple, which he's wanted to do like for the entire first movie, and he's like, "What's happened to my ship?" And then it ends, and you're like, "Fuck!" I want to watch the third movie right now. You know, like I'm ready right now for that.
Yeah, and that was cool when with the Barbossa thing, where like when they went to Tia Dama's house, and the monkey runs into that room, and you see the pair of boots lying on the bed. You know, and that's it. I wasn't, but you know what? It's funny because when I watched it the first time, that didn't register to me because I was engrossed in the movie. So it was kind of like a throwaway scene. I wasn't paying attention. But then at the end, when he comes out, like, oh, that's who was on the bed. So
that's good writing. That's good.
Yeah,
writing.
Man.
Yeah,
that was
cool.
Writing.
That's just a great movie. Again, the first scene where those things come like the Davy Jones's crew. Is it Skarsgård where he comes out of the wall? He's like a barnacle.
Yeah.
You know, and then you're like, oh, that's fucking gross. Yeah.
Well, then there was that like old guy who's in the wall, and he comes out and you see his brain.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. And it's like, wow. I mean, it was fantastic. The imagination and the creativity that went into those movies. I mean, it was, and like, and they amped it up to 10 for the second one.
It's easy to blow them off as just silly, but they're not.
No, they're not.
They're not. They're really good movies. Yeah. And people, you know, somebody cared. You know, somebody took the time. Are they the greatest things you've ever seen? No, but somebody cared and somebody gave a shit, and they're solid fucking movies.
They're fun. Like I said for the first one, they're fun popcorn films.
Yeah, they are.
You watch the movie and you're jamming popcorn in your mouth and you're like, the hell with it.
And laughing. They're fun. Yeah, they're funny.
They're like, oh shit, I'm sorry. When Keira Knightley handcuffed him, I went, you bitch.
And they have
and he's like, pirate. He just laughs at her. He's like, pirate.
Yeah. And they have some good sword fighting too. That three-way sword fight with him, Norrington, and Will Turner on the beach is great. And then on that big wheel and all that stuff. Yeah. That's good stuff.
It's good stuff, man.
Yeah.
So, we're definitely this is a pro pirates crowd here today. Very cool. All right, I think that brings me to me.
Yes.
And I have to present this movie in the form of a question. What is the riddle of steel? Conan the Barbarian.
There it is.
There it is.
I knew it was coming up at some point.
This easily could have been my number one, but my number one was a particular movie for a particular reason, which I'll address later.
Yeah.
But I remember I didn't see, the Pirates or a lot of these movies. I didn't see them in the theater. This movie I saw in the theater, and so this was 1982. So
I was too young to see this in the theater.
I was 14. And I was like, I had never seen anything like this before.
Yeah.
And to be perfectly honest, I mean, we've talked about a lot of the fantasy movies that came out in the 80s, and we've talked about, we've covered Lady Hawk, and we've covered Willow, and we've covered Legend. I feel personally, for me, that this movie stands apart from those movies. It's much darker. It's much bloodier.
Yeah, man.
It is just like a fucking testosterone tour de force.
That's true.
Which launched Arnold Schwarzenegger 2 years before he really blew up with the Terminator.
That's right.
You've got the ultimate villain, James Earl Jones.
Yeah, man.
As Thulsa Doom.
Yeah.
Right.
You've got Jerry,
with a good weave. James Earl Jones.
Oh, man.
That wig,
Yeah, he had Big Ben Davidson from the NFL playing Rexor.
Okay.
One of the recurring guys he used in a lot of his other movies, a big bodybuilder at the time, playing Thulsa Doom's other stooge, Forgrim. He had those two big guys.
Yeah.
Max von Siedow as King Ozrik, the Usurper.
I forgot he was in that.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah. He's the one who sends them out on the mission. It's his daughter that they have to bring back. Sandal Bergman, who I didn't know and haven't seen really since. I think she was in like Red Sonja or something like that. She was a dancer.
I think she was in was she in the second Conan? Like in
Flashbacks? No, she was in Red Sonja playing a separate character.
Oh, I see. Okay.
She never really had much of an acting career. She was like she was a dancer. She was like a stage dancer. That kind of thing. And Jerry Lopez, the fucking surfer, the old hippie surfer, Jerry Lopez playing Subutai, the Arcanian, the thief and archer. I mean, to this day, I have Robert E. Howard's in hardcover, The Complete Stories of Conan the Barbarian.
Oh, that's awesome. I've seen that at your house,
based on just my viewing of this movie. And I'm not even talking yet about Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Right.
Who's, like, who the hell is this guy?
Yeah.
And it's just an epic tale, sex, hardcore R-rated violence, blood, revenge. I think it was co-written by Oliver Stone and directed by John Milius. Who's like an old school, kind of man's man kind of guy. And they just crafted a fucking story that, it's
badass, man. It's probably the fantasy movie, or at the time, I think it was the fantasy movie by which all others were judged.
Yeah, they made those other movies like Beastmaster and The Sword and the Sorcerer and all that. And
Beastmaster. Yeah, that was funny.
And they were all
Ator or whatever.
Gore.
Gore. Outlaw of Gore.
I remember seeing that like on Mystery Science Theater 3000.
It was. With Jack Palance. I think Rip Torn is in one of those movies.
Oh, God, yeah. But it's like, when Schwarzenegger came out, and if you didn't get a chance to read the books, you also had the comic books that was out. Marvel Comics.
Oh, that's right.
Heavy Metal Magazine were doing stories like that.
Mm-hmm.
When he walked out, I'm like, oh, he doesn't need a bodysuit. He's in.
No, he's
when you see him as the kid pushing the wheel
of pain,
and you see him later on, and the ditch is like that deep, and but I'm like, of course he's going to get that huge.
Yeah, that was Arnold at his like steroid fucking peak. He was. I think they said that like he had won Mr. Universe or Mr. Olympia like 5 times, and then I guess he was doing this, and I think by default, he just sort of got into so much shape doing it. He's like, the hell with it, I'll go back and do it again, and he won like 6 times.
Yeah,
Now,
but he was perfect.
Have you read those Conan books that you have?
Not all of them. I've read quite a few of the short stories. Probably
because I'd like to check them out. Yeah,
you're welcome to borrow it.
Yeah.
I know you take good care of it.
Howard also wrote a similar character that they made a movie of in the 90s called Cole the Conqueror.
Right.
And the movie was with Kevin Sorbo and Tia Carrera. But Cull is another character who I think he's in the same world as Conan. He's basically like the same as Conan almost. But Howard wrote a lot of those stories.
The difference was Conan had a sword and Cole had a battle axe.
Yeah.
You know, but they would, like comic books, they would even fight side by side.
Okay,
You know.
Yeah.
But I forgot Kevin Sorbo did that.
Yeah.
I really did.
I had Conan and the that fucking soundtrack.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I've had this on VHS. I've had it on DVD. Now I own it on Blu-ray. I haven't watched it since I bought it on Blu-ray. After this is over tonight, I might actually go watch some fucking Conan, lay on the couch and fucking watch it. Because now, you know, I want to see some fucking Arnold. And he had that big, he had that, like that sword, like the intro scene where his father's making the sword.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, you're just like, holy shit, it's like so fucking over the top. It's just,
and that scene thing. That, I was obviously too young when it came out. 82, I was like 5. But when I saw it finally, I was like, yeah, this is badass. And then that one scene's creepy. That scene with the witch, where he's
oh
like,
yeah.
She turns into a witch. You're like, what the hell?
Yeah. Hold on a second. We got a quick comment here. The Still Drifter coming in from Ireland. Thank you. Good morning to you two over there in Dublin, I believe. So good morning to you as well. All right. That's good enough for number 4. Let's get to number 3. Number 3. John, what do you got for us?
We're going to go way back, baby. Way back to the 1950s, early 1960s.
Oh, boy.
Jason and the Argonauts.
Yeah, good. I'm glad I didn't put that on there. Yeah, man. Yeah.
This movie, when I was a little kid, this was always on TV for some reason in Philadelphia stations. They played it all, Channel 48 on the UHF channel. Always had this.
I remember every weekend it was on.
Yeah, man.
I loved this movie.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid, it also scared the shit out of me.
Yeah.
The Colossus coming alive.
Talos. Yeah, the Bronze Warrior.
The fighting skulls and them growing out of the ground.
Yeah.
And I was terrified. And then I saw this when I was in college.
Mm-hmm.
And I still was terrified. Because of all these, nightmare images as a kid. But it's Greek mythology. Which is really perfect to play fantasy if you do it right.
Yeah.
The clay animation,
the stop motion,
perfect. Yeah, stop motion. Yeah. Christ, even the head of the ship that would turn and spoke.
Yeah, Hera. Yeah.
It was just the way they told this story. They weren't backing away from the myth.
No, they weren't.
That's what I liked about it. Because normally they could rewrite it, or all of a sudden, wow, Jason has a Walkman, or something. They'll change it or add something to it. They kept as true as they possibly could, even when he pissed off the gods to help the guy who was blind and being distracted. He goes, well, if Zeus doesn't like it, then the hell with him, or the Hades with him, and thunder clapping in the background. They did the whole 9 yards for this.
Mm-hmm. And my only I remember when it was between this or Clash of the Titans on my list, but my only thing is it's hilarious because I showed this movie to my students and they all liked it too when I did my Greek mythology unit. But my only thing is when Hercules shows up,
right?
And it's like he's a little bit of a weak looking Hercules. They use this guy. Nigel Green. I mean, because we all have our idea of Hercules as this huge, jack guy. And it's funny. I remember my students were like, "That's Hercules," and because he's got
The Rock at that point. The Rock had done Hercules by then, so that's
that's what
they're used to.
But
Well,
yeah,
like
it's a
Steve
cool
Reeves
movie.
did it too a lot. Steve Reeves
Yeah,
had
yeah.
just did all those movies. So they say, quick, let's throw Hercules in for a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well,
people say, Hercules, oh, it's him.
Well, Hercules is in the
Yeah.
Argonautica. He is part of the crew up to a certain point.
But it was more built than that.
yeah, but that the best sequence in that is the Talos scene.
Oh,
the
God,
bronze way. It's awesome. Just the way, it was the precursor to Clash of the Titans when they just went all out. But yeah, this has some great moments.
It was either, for me, it was either this or one of the Sinbad movies.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Sinbad is the best.
Is that the one with Patrick Wayne?
Yeah, man.
But because of the same type way they would explain the tale. They didn't back away from it or try to change it.
Yeah.
I mean, they adapted it to a movie. Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Well, this was back before. This was back before anybody knew what cultural appropriation was or being politically correct. In fact, they were pretty politically incorrect. That they were just telling straight up stories.
Yeah, some of them. Yeah.
Well, these were the days of like Sean Connery. He's James Bond. He's like cranking women's arms back behind their back and slapping them around.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
Kind of stuff. They weren't pulling punches back then.
But when he was saving England, he was saving America. That's how.
Yeah, exactly. He was our buddy. We needed him.
Yeah.
Now, in I'm trying to think. In Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, was that Kerwin Matthews or Patrick Wayne? I forget.
Kerwin Matthews.
Kerwin Matthews.
They had a couple guys play Sinbad. Throughout eons. But Christ, they brought a griffin to life for me.
Yeah, I know.
I thought that was so cool. But
yeah.
The same thing. And I'll give it to Harry Houston too. It's when they're fighting the skulls in this movie, and the skulls are grinding their teeth.
Yeah.
Swinging. I'm like, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
It
was and the fight with the Hydra
in the television room.
Yeah, the fight with the Hydra, that was a cool scene. Yeah, man. That's a good one. Good choice.
It was a good fantasy and telling stories.
Awesome, yeah.
King.
All right, that brings us to Ryan, number 3. What do you got for us?
This movie is more of the falls more under magical realism. I absolutely adore this movie. I just discovered it recently. It's called, in English, it's called Black Orpheus. It's a Portuguese movie from 1959. It's a retelling of the Orpheus and Eurydice myth. It is an absolutely beautiful film. I remember reading about it, and I was like, it looks kind of cool. And basically, the premise is Orpheus and Eurydice, but during the carnival season. It's all bright colors, the music. The music is fantastic. This is the movie that started the bossa nova craze. Because the music is by Luis Bonfa, and it's absolutely beautiful. Everything about this movie, Orpheus he's like a trolley driver, but he plays music. He's like the best musician in the little town. All the kids love him and everything. And Eurydice is she lives with her cousin. She's going to be a dancer in the carnival and stuff. And one of the coolest things about the movie is they have this character who represents death, and he's in like a bodysuit, kind of like a skeleton bodysuit. You never know who the guy is, but he shows up in certain scenes and he doesn't say anything. It's really creepy. He kind of just appears, and he's the harbinger of what's eventually going to happen. And they were all local actors. The director, he's a French guy. Marcel Camus was his name. He had just all local actors in the parts. And it follows the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice, and like when he goes after Eurydice dies, when he goes into the underworld, it's a Santeria ritual. It's something like that, like one of the local religions, and so they transpose a lot of that stuff, but it's still the story, and it's just I'm crazy about this movie, and I finally got it. I got the Criterion version, and I watched it one night, and I was just like, what a fabulous movie. And it won the it won the whatever the big prizes at the Cannes Film Festival that year. It won the Palme d'Or, and it's just if you like Greek mythology, it's a wonderful retelling.
I was just going to say it's streaming on HBO Max right now.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it's on HBO Max right now. So if you have access to HBO Max, you can check it out.
It is a beautiful movie.
When I taught theater history, I started off with the Greek. And everybody, when I would talk about Greek theater, there was always one student who walked up and said, "Have you seen this movie?"
Because wow, okay. Yeah.
It seemed to be getting I don't want to say it's getting refreshed, and people are looking to
a resurgence. Yeah, that's cool. Because I think
when you found it, I'm like, when you said it, I'm like, man, I hear it at least once a year. Somebody saying, "Did you see this movie?"
Wow, and it's weird because I think for a long time it was not well known, and I stumbled upon it one day. I forget what I was looking at, and I was like, "What's this movie?" Black Orpheus, or Orfeu Negro as it's called in Portuguese, but and I was like, there was something about it that made me want to see it, and just reading about it and looking at the cover, which the cover art I love, and then finally getting it and watching it, I was not disappointed. It's a beautiful movie. But yeah, I think if
sorry, I thought you were.
No, that's fine.
There was a comment about the movie. Mike said had a college class about comparing Greek and Roman myths and legends with Hollywood adaptations. So we watched Black Orpheus one week. It didn't quite do it for me the first time, but it has improved after a rewatch.
It's just really well done, and it follows more the magical realism. I think it's really it's a neat movie. It's really cool.
And like I said, if you've got HBO Max, if anybody's watching this in the live stream, or if you're watching it on on the replay, you can catch it that way. Very cool. All right, so who's up next?
That would be me.
Oh, it's me. Hey, it's me. Me. I feel like a Hugo Weaving. Me. All right. So that brings me to my number 3, which easily could have been my number 1. But again, my number 1 is in that position for a particular reason, which I'll address later. And I was very surprised that no one picked this. And I don't know if people were deliberately trying. I don't think anybody does that here. But I was shocked nobody picked this. I went with Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth.
There you go.
Okay.
Which is just...
I was wondering if you were actually going to cover this.
I would love to. I'm afraid anybody that said anything, it would be one of the ones that one of the few movies that I'd be super protective and sensitive about. It's so beautiful. Yeah. It's so beautiful. I just absolutely love this movie. Again, I think it was a movie. I don't think I saw this in the theater. I think I was overseas when it came out. But it's a masterpiece. I don't even know how someone would think of a story like this, and you've all seen it. This set in fascist Spain, of this little girl and her mother who come to live with the local fascist leader, in the military junta, who actually is a princess, who has been separated from her mythical parents, who are a king and a queen, and these fantastic sort of characters who are trying to reconnect her back with her legitimate family, while she's also trying to survive this extraordinarily cruel man that has married her mother. You get the impression her mother is just sort of forced into this marriage after their father has died, her husband has died, and is now, just sort of in this arranged marriage with this monster. Right. And it's just, I mean, I don't even know where someone would come up with something like this, except it's Guillermo del Toro. Mm-hmm. And that's just how his mind works. And it's just, it's impossibly good to me. Mm-hmm. It's like one of those movies. Have you seen it, Ryan?
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, I thought it was just one of those movies that's just yeah. I can't. I'm flubbering now, to try to come up with words to describe it. How much I love this movie. Yeah. I don't watch it very often because it's one of those movies where I just want to sit down and like not be disturbed for 2.5 hours. Yeah, and watch it and just be mesmerized.
So you're not going to watch it tonight after Conan?
I doubt I'll be up that late. I doubt I'll make it to Conan. Maybe I'll have to have another monster, but I don't know. I would take it over Conan.
I saw this movie once, and for me, Guillermo del Toro is kind of an acquired taste. Some of his movies I like. Some of them are a little weird for me. Like I like the Hellboy movies. But this one I remember seeing, and I only saw it once, and not really understanding what was going on. Like when she was talking to the pan, and I mean the effects and all that are fantastic. That's what I love about Del Toro's movies is his imagination. And Doug Jones with the thing with the eyes on his hands and all that, that freaked me out. But I didn't understand a little bit, but now that you're explaining it, I can, obviously it's worth a rewatch at some point.
It's one of those movies you can't watch it and talk.
Right.
You can't watch it and check out your phone.
Yeah. You have to be.
And have distractions. Yeah, you actually. And I'll tell people certain movies. I'm like, if you're going to watch this, like, watch it. Put everything else away. And just you need to watch it because it's almost like a dialogue movie. Mm-hmm. If you're watching a movie like Hellboy, you almost don't need dialogue because you're just watching him punch through everything.
Yeah, then it's Ron Perlman.
Yeah, and you can watch, or you can watch him do the second Blade movie.
Right. Yeah.
Which is
that's right. I forgot he did that.
Yeah, that's a fantastic and probably the best of the three. Although that first movie was really solid. Or you could get to one of my favorite movies of his. Which is the haunted house movie, the ghost story he did, The Devil's Backbone, which is completely in Spanish. Okay. Yeah, The Devil's that's a fantastic ghost story. And he's done some others. I'm always a fan. Obviously, what's the one with the Jaegers and the Kaijus?
Oh, Pacific Rim?
Pacific Rim.
Yeah.
Well, that's just a tribute to all the 70s Godzilla movies. Yeah. But I mean, sometimes he'll go into these other things that you can tell he's tapping into a completely different level of, his mind, for something like Kronos, or something like that. And you're just like, this guy is he's an auteur,
Yeah.
There was a movie, Mike, because I love this movie too. When I watched it the first time, I found myself crying at the end and didn't feel the cry come on. Like sometimes I'm crying, I can start feeling it coming, whatever. And I'm watching this, and when the credits rolling, I look, I realized there's tears that were rolling down my face. It really affected me. When I worked at Cape May Stage, a friend of mine was getting married at the theater, and her husband is a famous artist. Like he sells paintings for $8,000 and people fight to pay for it. She lives in North Cape May. He walked in because I was cleaning the theater and washing it up for the wedding and put a white canvas up. I helped him hang it on the back wall. And he goes, "When are you coming back?" And I said, "About 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning." He said, "Good. If I'm asleep, wake me up." And he starts painting on the canvas. I walked back in that morning at about 7:30. He painted the opening to Pan's Labyrinth.
Oh.
That was for the wedding. Because she asked him to.
Wow.
And said, "I'll do that for you tonight, my dear."
Yeah.
That's
and
awesome.
I walked in and started crying because he just
Hmm.
had it. And he goes, "Have you ever seen this movie?" And we sat for an hour and talked about it.
Hmm.
You know, you're right. Everything you're saying, you cannot be distracted.
Yeah.
If there's somebody who likes talking during movies,
Yeah.
shut the fuck up.
They've ruined it. They'll ruin it for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you have to take it in. This
Yeah.
is old style fantasy that wraps up in a love story.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Edward Scissorhand, for some people, see that the same way. Nowhere near the same level, but that whole concept of the fantasy and being entangled or entwined with romance.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of makes it work too, because you don't want to call it a love story because it is a fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
But technically it is a love story.
Yeah, it's not a romantic love story. It's just, it's trying to reconcile with your family.
Yeah.
And it's interspersed with these incredible pieces of cruelty that happened at the same time, with the on the ground with the the new stepfather. He's just an awful, awful monster. It's a hell of a thing. He is, in terms of, in many ways, he is the destination in terms of, what people are capable of producing nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was even going to,
he was going to do The Hobbit.
Well, not only that, he was going to do H.P. Lovecraft's At the Mouth of Madness.
Oh, really?
At the Mountains of Madness.
Yeah.
Of all people, they had cast Tom Cruise in the lead role, which could have worked. Because like Tom Cruise has that 50-50 thing. But that was at the same time that Ridley Scott had put together Prometheus.
Right.
Oh,
and the sets that Ridley Scott had designed for Prometheus were too similar to what Del Toro had in mind for Lovecraft. And so he just scratched the whole project, and it hasn't come to pass since. I'm hoping at some point, I would love to see Del Toro do some Lovecraft.
He would like.
Yeah, he would be the guy to do it. He would do it some justice. Yeah.
Exactly.
Fantastic stuff.
Absolutely.
All right. Number two. Two. What you gonna do? Let's see. John, what you got for
us? Thank you, Brom, for the slight introduction. I am going to say the title of my number two, and people are going to go, Peter Jackson, and I'm going to be, no, it's wrong. The Hobbit from 1970.
Oh, yes, the Rankin Bass Hobbit.
The Hobbit.
Wow.
I had just literally finished reading The Hobbit.
Okay.
And this came on television on ABC. This was originally made for television.
Okay.
And it was the first time I saw a fantasy movie that went right along with the book.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, and it was told in such an obscure way that it really sat with me. When I had this, I used to play this for when nieces and nephews were getting a certain age.
Mm-hmm.
Now they have, with Peter Jackson, no joke intended, but I would play this because these guys did 2 movies. The Hobbit was the first, and John Huston was the voice of Gandalf.
Yep.
And all these radio actors were doing the voices, so there was an intensity in the voice when they were doing it. They weren't backing away from it. They weren't making it silly or just going, "Hi, come on in, Bilbo. I'm just talking to collect my money." It was there was an intensity they brought to it.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, their version of the Gollum, I swear to God, Peter Jackson stole or borrowed or homaged.
Well, I think he was inspired by it. Yeah.
Because it was the same voice, and it was that whole eerie feeling that was set up, and I was at the time 11 years old. Goosebumps were popping all over my arms. But
I remember seeing it on TV. Yeah,
and I was and it was amazing to me. Later on they did the Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, and
they did that one.
Did it.
Yeah,
but it was nowhere near as good as this one, and I think it's because, like when I mentioned last year when we did the list at the beginning, and the Wizard of Oz saying it was a good way to introduce children to fantasy.
Yeah.
Type deal. And this was a great way to do it because Rankin Bass did all the Christmas cartoons. You always heard that theme and things like that. And all of a sudden you were like, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah.
This was gutsy for an animated company to do.
And I
really
always
was.
I like this movie, and I like the animation. It's different. And it's yeah, and I specifically remember the Gollum scenes. Because he just looked weird and just this thing. He looked like a gray, like frog type thing. And but they really captured the spirit of the book, I think. They did a nice job.
Mike, I don't know if you remember, but when we were together in college, I was up in a they shot mall rats up there, one of the malls up in North Jersey.
Okay.
And in one of those little booths, they had a poster, and it was Smog laying on his gold from.
Oh, cool!
And I bought it right away. They're like, "You're not going to be able to eat tonight." I don't care. And I put it up on my wall. I still have it, I think, somewhere in storage because
that's cool.
Smog, I smell you, thief.
Yeah,
still gets me.
Honestly, I think the cartoon is better than the Peter Jackson films. I was disappointed by the Peter Jackson films, but I know there were reasons why those movies weren't as good. But this one's and then I saw the Two Towers, the Ralph Bakshi one. Yeah. And that was weird with the rotoscoping and and all that. Yeah. And then I do vaguely remember the Return of the King. I don't remember that one as much, but yeah, this one's a classic. Yeah.
And it was old-fashioned etching. This wasn't computer images being done.
Yeah, no.
It was, it was old school style, or what you would call old school now. Yeah. And it was a big risk. They were talking about how much money they were spending to do it, and like, we want to tell this story. Back when they took a risk to tell a fantasy, especially for television.
I still remember to this day the Orc song. Where there's a whip, there's a way. We don't want to go to war today. But it doesn't matter. Get moving. You're like, all right, I'm going. Jeez. It was a classic, man. I still remember to this day. I haven't seen it since I was a little kid, but
me neither.
I mean, it's like I just quoted the lines from that song, and I still think about that. Good stuff. All right, number 2, Ryan, what do you got for us?
I have, this one is my favorite Disney movie, and it's one that did not do well in the theaters because it was at their transition period right before they got into complete CG. But it is an absolutely fantastic movie, Atlantis, The Lost Empire. Okay. It's a fantastic homage to Jules Verne. It's that steampunk kind of genre. It's an awesome story about a group of explorers who go to try to find Atlantis, and it turns out that the leader of the explorers is really a mercenary, and he turns on them and takes the Atlanteans hostage and all this stuff. Leonard Nimoy is in it. James Garner, Michael J. Fox voices the lead character Milo. It's a fantastic movie, and the story is great because I love Jules Verne and I love all the steampunk stuff, so I immediately was drawn to it. And they have a submarine, that's inspired a lot by the Nautilus. It takes place in 1914, and the animation is fantastic in that, and it's all hand-drawn. There's only certain parts that are CG because they hadn't. It came out in like 2000 or 2001, so they hadn't completely gone full CG yet. But it's a very underrated movie, and I love it. It's an awesome. Father Guido Sarducci, Don Novello is one of the voices. Jim Varney. It was the last movie Jim Varney did before he passed away. It's got a great voice cast, and the characters are really good in it. It's a well-written movie. It's very character heavy. Each of the characters is an individual. Each of them has a reason for going on the expedition, and each of them has a reaction when they find out what the expedition really is about, you know. But it's a really just neat, wild movie, and it's they came up with their own language for the Atlanteans. Whoever wrote that, like, just invented a language for the movie, which I thought was really cool too. But yeah, it's my favorite Disney film, and it's worth a watch. It's not your run of the mill Disney. It's definitely geared more toward adults and teenagers and stuff. It's not singing and dancing and stuff like that, you know. Definitely more mature, and it's that pulpy, like I said, the pulpy kind of Doc Savage, you know, Flash Gordon type of Jules Verne stuff. It's really neat.
Okay. I've never seen it, so okay. All right.
Yeah.
This one, I don't know anything about this.
I actually skipped it when it came out because I saw a preview. I'm like, oh, this isn't. I didn't think it was cool. And then I caught it when it came on cable, and I'm like, oh man, I regret missing this.
Yeah.
It's one of those movies you would like to see on a big screen.
Yeah.
So get that thing in. And you're right. I was taken back. I was surprised by it. I really was. I was like, damn, this is a nice flick.
Yeah.
And I forgot Leonard Nimoy was in it. I'm like, oh, that's right. Now I remember.
Yeah, he's the king of the Atlanteans, but
he's the king of the Atlanteans. Of course, Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah, but
he's the king of the Atlanteans.
Yeah, but it's got a lot of cool scenes. It's got some good some good moments, some good action and stuff. Yeah, like I said, it's more of a mature Disney film in that respect.
True.
It's not something I would show like my kids, maybe in a few years, but not now. So
it reminded me a little bit of the intensity of like for The Secret of Nim. If you remember that in the early 80s.
Yeah, I remember that.
More of that adult style. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. We haven't got much Disney rep in this.
No.
I noticed that.
Well, we haven't touched a lot of Disney.
We
did Pirates.
You did Pirates,
we got 20,000 Leagues, and we did Pirates, yeah.
Oh, 20,000 Leagues, that's right.
Okay.
I can't remember. No, it was so long ago. It was last year.
Yeah, last year.
Yeah, it was. That was last year. Yeah.
I had a thicker beard.
Indeed. For the holidays.
Yeah.
All right, that brings me to my number 2, and it could have just as easily, again, been my number 1, but again, my number 1 is there for a reason, which I'll get into at that time. And I could have picked any of the movies from this particular series, but I picked this one for my number 2. I always enjoy watching it, maybe more than any of the others, and that is The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. The reason I pick this movie over any of the others, and this is just my opinion, 2 words. Sean Bean.
Yes.
Sean Bean and the Boromir character, and the way and how effectively he portrays it. It's just so damn human.
Yeah.
You know, because he's just such a tragically flawed character who wants, and we all know the story. I won't get into it.
Yeah.
But he's just such a flawed character. He wants to do well. He's there seemingly for the right reasons, but you watch this man just get lost.
Yeah.
You know, you just watch him lose his way. And then by the time he finds his way back, it's too late.
Yeah.
You know, and it's my favorite Sean Bean performance.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the great treats of these extended versions was getting to the 2 towers and seeing Sean Bean again.
Yeah, that
which was not a scene that came from the books.
No.
But you got an impression. It sort of lent some sympathy to Boromir. And what an overbearing jerk, although he was, influenced at the time. What an effect that had on Boromir.
Mm-hmm.
and his son.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're especially if you're watching the extended versions.
Yeah, that's the only way
I'll watch it now. Yeah. You could just sit back and watch it, and it's just beautiful. And Ian McKellen and Viggo Mortensen and just Hugo Weaving and Liv Tyler and just everybody's just fucking amazing. Ian Holm as Bilbo, and it's just. But again, for me, and all of them are great. All of them are great.
Yeah.
And so it's subjective which one you want to pick. But for me, what puts this over, and this is the only Lord of the Rings that I picked, was Boromir.
Yeah, it's funny. I just started watching it again, and I haven't seen it in a long time. I'm watching the extended version on Blu-ray. Can you believe this movie is 21 years old now?
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. But yeah, Boromir in the movie. I read the books like crazy, and Boromir in the movie is so much better than Boromir in the book. I mean,
he's very flat.
At the end of that movie, the first time I saw it, I cried when Boromir died, and you see the way it's filmed, and you see Merry and Pippin getting taken away.
Yeah,
and it's such a gut punch that they ended it with that scene, because the Two Towers book opens with that scene.
Yeah, with the death. With the death of Boromir.
Yeah. So I'm kind of glad they ended it that way in the movie. And one of my all-time favorite actors, Christopher Lee, as Saruman.
Yeah, Saruman. Yeah,
that was a fantastic choice on Peter Jackson's part. And I remember watching the interviews on the extended version, and how like Christopher Lee was the only cast member who actually met Tolkien. And he was like a walking Tolkien encyclopedia. The guy read those stories every year for years. He knew he could speak the Elvish languages. He was so immersed in these stories. And it was the movie that, and it's funny because I think a couple of the cast members were kind of implying it was a movie that you didn't expect to see Christopher Lee in, and because he was experiencing his resurgence at that point. He was doing that. He was doing Star Wars. He was doing a bunch of stuff, and he's a great Saruman, and I'm glad that they gave him a lot more to do, because Saruman doesn't have a lot in Fellowship of the Ring in the book. He's barely in it. His big moment is in the Two Towers, Right. But that whole cast was great. But for me, Sean Bean and Christopher Lee, and I love John Rhys Davies as Gimli. I mean, he's great too. But they're all awesome. But just I agree with you though. I mean, Sean Bean really, I think, stole that movie, with his performance.
Sean Bean. Go ahead. No, please go ahead.
I was just going to say two things real quick. One, the scene in Rivendell where the Black Speech descends real quick.
Yeah.
And everything starts to darken, and you're like, oh man, this is fucking serious. Yeah. And then, when Boromir dies and Legolas runs up and he stops, and that look on his face, like, oh.
Yeah, he can't understand it because he's too late. Yeah.
Yeah, he's just like, oh, and he's like, oh, and it's just, you're like, oh man, this is awful.
I think that look too is one that Legolas can't comprehend death, because elves are immortal. So it's a look of like, we're too late, but it's also like what's happening? Like he's dying. What the like he kind of can't grasp it,
Go ahead, John.
No, I think when you were talking about Sean Bean, I'm going, and I agree. But when you look at Sean Bean, and the polar opposite of the characters in that movie was Sean Astin, who was Samwise.
Yeah.
Because you saw the one being tempted, and oh my God, he fought when he. To me, it was at the end he redeemed himself, but you saw the strength of the ring, and he portrayed it well over everybody else. You then saw with Sean Austin the strength of the friend type deal.
Yeah.
Even walking in the water to drown. Sean Bean turned around and goes, "It's because of this movie, everybody expects me now to die in all my films."
Yeah.
Even TNT made a joke about it when it was on it. He did some TV show for 2 years as a spy, and he goes, "We promise you this: Sean Bean won't die." You know, but his portrayal when he was at the very end and still trying to fight to and the guy I'm like, when he gets killed, I was with one of my younger nephews, and I felt him lean up against me and go, "Damn it."
Yeah.
I said, yeah, he did. I don't think you were expecting that either. Someone to die.
No.
And he did it, and he did it well.
I think
I hadn't read any of
time,
the stories before I saw the first movie. And so I saw
I
the
read
first
them
movie,
a long
and then
time.
fuck. I hadn't. And then I was like, fuck. And then I just went and bought the whole trilogy. And before the second movie came out, I had read everything, including the Silmarillion. Like I started from the Hobbit and just went all the way through. So I had no idea that any of this was going to happen.
Yeah.
And I remember we said that I think earlier I had picked Harry Potter in like number 8 or something like that.
Yeah.
And I remember everyone's talking about, this Harry Potter, and now it's like it was a kid's movie. And then I think a month later, this movie came out.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, this is what I wanted to see.
Right.
This was what I wanted. I'm like, oh shit, yeah, this is more like it. I got to get out and read these books now.
Actually, Mike, what Sir Ian McKellen went on the Colbert Show back when he was on Comedy Central, talking about this movie when it first came out. You did exactly what Sir Ian said. Colbert's going, well, how's it going? Everything's going. He's going, oh, we're already done the second movie. We're just working on the CGI now to get it right. And Sir Ian goes, every time I say this in an interview, they keep saying, well, why don't you just release the movie? And I'm like, well, why don't you just read the books? The books are there.
Yeah.
You have to wait.
And what I thought was cool.
I'm like, damn, you did exactly what he said.
Yeah. What I thought was cool about these movies too is that Peter Jackson filmed them all at once. Like all back to back. Was like a whole year. And that was like that had never been done before, but I think it worked in the long run.
I think they said that New Line Cinema gave him $250 million. They basically gave him every penny that they had, and they said, this is our whole company here. Like, we're giving you like every penny that we have. Go out and, please, hit a home run for us. And clearly he fucking did.
Yeah.
Especially releasing it for 3 consecutive years. Revenue, and then home releases and, then cable TV and, all these things.
The one person who did not like these movies was the curmudgeonly son of J.R.R. Tolkien, Christopher Tolkien, who was his executor. He was J.R.R.'s literary executor, and he was very protective of his dad's stuff. He was very, I remember reading when the movie came out, he was very protective of his dad's stuff. And he was like, oh, they just turned it into an action movie. There's none of like the gravitas that was in the book.
Oh, come on.
Which I kind of disagree with. I think
every movie would have to be 8 hours long.
Yeah,
exactly. But see, I disagree. I think there was a lot of gravitas in those movies. I think there's a lot of heart in those movies. Yeah. Again, he was just an old curmudgeonly man. I mean, he died at like 90 something.
Yeah,
Yeah. Alan Moore hates all his own stuff.
He hates everything.
When I saw these movies, everyone said to me, did you like it? And I said yes, to a point. And they said why? And I said, well, I always felt my imagination was a little better. But I loved the stories. I loved what they did. It wasn't,
yeah.
and I said, but that it wasn't like I'm going to say, oh, I'm not watching this. You know,
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
he's going to be that guy because you know you're not my dad. You didn't do it.
I know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But now I think it's Tolkien's. It's Tolkien's. Because Christopher passed away in the past couple years, so I think it's
now it's someone even grouchier.
No, I think it's his grandson.
No. It's a family member, but it's like a grandson or a great grandson who's now he's a little more flexible. Yeah, he's a younger guy.
Yeah, so clearly because they've already given all their money to fucking
Amazon.
Amazon.
Yeah,
so like they're completely inventing. You know, fucking
I heard
like sex.
Yeah, I heard they were like. Which I don't want it to turn into Game of Thrones because that's not what Lord of the Rings is.
It's the second age, isn't it?
No, yeah, but I think they were, from what I understand, they were trying to do the Silmarillion, but I don't know.
I'm not betting my grandmother on it.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I'm not going to watch it though because I think they're going to try and make it too much like Game of Thrones, and it shouldn't be. So, you know,
I agree.
But whatever.
I still got to catch up on The Witcher, so I'll leave. I'll jump off that bridge when I get there.
I heard that's a cool show. So
the first season was great, and I'm going to rewatch the first season before I start the second.
I haven't read any of the books.
Well, hold on a second. Hold on. Hold your horses. That brings us to our number one movie. Number one. You see what I'm doing there? One. All right. Number one, numero uno, John. What do you got for us? Lay it on us.
Some people are going to argue with this. And I don't care because I even double checked it on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah.
But in my head, it's the same thing.
Fine.
Terry Gilliam's The Fisher King with Robin Williams.
Wow.
Beautiful
and
movie.
Jeff Bridges. The reason why I did this is because when you talk about fantasy movies, and it's rightly so, it's faraway places, it's other different people, it's mythological stories about kings and queens and dragons and whatnot and dark knights, and Fisher King took all of that and put it in a realistic story. For those of you who didn't get to see it, a quick overview: Jeff Daniels plays it came out in 1990. 91. Jeff Daniels plays a radio jock very similar to Howard Stern. One of the guys, one of his local people that he calls, that he picks on all the time, was talking about, all the trendy people and places. And Jeff Bridges turns around and basically says to him, hey, you don't like, do something about it. If you're a coward, just go do something about it. And later on that day, that guy went into a restaurant and shot people with a shotgun. Talking about 14. Jeff Bridges falls down in this pit of despair, getting ready to kill himself. A bunch of local guys from Brooklyn come up and actually get ready to set him on fire. And you hear Robin Williams scream, "Let go of that man, you varlet!" And he's standing there like a knight, dressing homeless. And as he put it throughout the whole movie, he was a knight on a quest. And it was weird because you find out later on that his Robin Williams' wife was killed in that attack that Jeff Bridges sent the guy on. So as Robin Williams is on a quest, which you find out it means he's trying to get back to his sanity, Jeff Bridges joins the quest to redeem himself.
Yeah.
The story of the Fisher King is a wonderful story that Robin Williams tells, because in his previous life, before he went insane, he was a professor of medieval literature. And what there's scenes that are in, it's about love, it's about romance. Robin Williams is at his comedic best, but when he's not being funny, He's so goddamn incredibly charming.
Yeah.
Mercedes Rule plays a perfect female Sancho to Jeff Bridges, who's trying to, to do this. Amanda Plummer, Christopher Plummer's daughter, is the perfect ideal of the perfect woman to Robin Williams. And I'm sorry, if you don't want to watch the whole movie, go to YouTube and check out the Grand Central Station dance scene, because you see how Robin Williams sees the world, and it is so beautifully done.
Yeah,
and you'll never be able to listen to Irving Berlin's "How About You," because when he's standing there with all these bums, and they're saying, he goes, "You're nothing, gentlemen," and they start singing, "I like New York in June." My parents saw this in the movie theater. My father, of all people, called me and said, "You must see this movie. It's you." And I went, "Excuse me?" And he went, "This is the stories you tell. This is the things you would write. It's you." And he's dead right. This is a beautiful fantasy story of going on a quest, and it's about two friends. Or it's like what Robin Williams says when he's talking about the Fisher King, when the one child pulls out the chalice of Jesus and gives it to the king who's wounded, and he drinks and his hand gets healed. He said, "I've been looking for this my whole life. How did you find it? My greatest knights couldn't." And the kid said, "I don't know. I just knew you were thirsty. I wanted to help you." And it's wonderfully done, which is a part of fantasy you don't get to touch.
It's a movie that
it's very funny too.
It's a movie that has kind of been overlooked, I think, over time.
Yeah, I totally forgot about it.
It's just a fantastic movie. We watched it more than a few times, living at that old house in Smithville back in the day. It's a great movie. It's a great drama. It's a great fantasy. It's a great romance. It's beautifully written. It's just wonderfully acted. Yeah, I mean, everybody's just firing on all thrusters in that. Yep. It's a damn good movie.
Yeah, it's based in New York, man. Come on.
I saw it once, I think. I only vaguely rember it. I was younger when I saw it.
It's another movie that you actually have to watch. Like you can't, that doesn't work for this movie.
But it's funny because the story of the Fisher King appears in some of the King Arthur legends. Right. And it's the knights who are on the quest of the Grail who give the wounded king the Grail, the cup to drink from. It's a neat story. I really don't remember the movie that much because I saw it years and years ago. But I definitely see it again because I like Terry Gilliam stuff. So
and when you think about it, because it also falls in a trap. You have Robin Williams, who right before that did Dead Poets Society.
Oh yeah.
And a few years later, she did Good Will Hunting. And people are remembering those. This one, people go. It came out like late July 1991, and people are going, "What movie are you talking about?" I'm like, "Sit and watch this movie because it was really well done." And of course, Tom Waits, being the guy in the train station, being the example in the wheelchair, being the example to people why they don't take a pair of scissors and shove them in their bosses, is a great monologue where he's talking to Jeff Daniels. It's a really, really wonderfully done movie.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. It could easily be a number one on any list. It's good stuff. All right, Ryan, number one. What do you got? What's top of the heap there?
It was. I could have picked any of them, but I'm glad I didn't pick the one you picked because then we'd have another repeat. I have Lord of the Rings, but mine is Return of the King. For me, it's the penultimate of modern fantasy films. it wraps up the story beautifully. There's a lot of really cool moments in it that I think were expanded on from the book. I love the Dead Men of Dunharrow. I love that whole Battle of the Pelennor Fields goes down as probably the greatest movie battle. The way it's filmed, the way it's done is just the stuff with the Witch King and Eowyn, Theoden's death. It hits so many good points. And it was always my favorite of the books too. It's just I I think it's a great ending to the saga. It's a great ending to the trilogy. It was handled well. It's my go-to any of those movies again, but this is my favorite of all of them. I think just because of those elements and what a creep Denethor is. I love the way Denethor is portrayed in this. John Noble is fantastic. And I love the portrayal of Eowyn. All the characters really come full circle in it. And you know, I can forgive Peter Jackson for cutting Saruman's death scene because I can watch it on the extended version. I think that was kind of a not a smart move on Peter Jackson's part, but you know, but for me, it's my favorite. It's of all of them. Again, it's my opinion. I think it's flawless. I think this scene with Gollum when he falls into the lava and he's not even like burning or screaming or anything because of the ring, because he still is trying to grab that ring, even as he's dying, even as it's melting, he's still trying to grab it. His greed is like overpowered even his pain of falling in the lava. And that it's a beautifully done movie, and it deserved every award that it got. Although I will argue to my dying breath that it is not a drama as they categorized it in the Oscars, those jerks at the Oscars who don't recognize fantasy movies. But it's just, for me, it's the perfect one. It's you know, that whole series is what modern fantasy is measured by. And that's just, for me, that's the capper. It's just it's great. There's so many good moments in that, you know.
It's weird because the moment that always sticks out with me, well, there's two.
Yeah.
One is because there's a younger actress who I first taught and now work with as a performer. She looks at me and she'll put her hand on my face and goes, "I recognize that face." You know.
Yeah.
We that's our connection because but I'm sorry, when every fantasy like that, you have to have the hero.
Yeah.
And when they're standing at the gates and all hell literally is coming at them.
Yeah.
Aragorn turns around and just goes, "For Frodo," and run.
Yeah.
I was in a movie theater when he said, "For Frodo," and then the two hobbits take off after him. Somebody in the movie theater goes, "Kick the fucking ass!" And I was like, "Shit!" And the whole thing just exploded on it. You know?
Yeah.
I will honestly tell you this, and people will argue with me because we argue about the Marvel movies a lot.
Yeah.
I truly believe that this movie, on as big a scale as it was, didn't bring it home, there would be no more Marvel movies. Because there would be none. They had to be that big. And people were saying, "Well, you can't tell a story with something that big." And Peter Jackson said, "Yes, I can. Look at this."
Exactly. Yeah.
You know?
And the scope of it was just fantastic. I mean, and like I said, I have to go back to the Battle of Pelennor Fields.
Yep.
Because it was just, it's such an awesome scene. It's an awesome with the big elephants and all this, you know, and yeah, Theoden's death scene is
I still just won.
yeah. Theoden's death scene is one for the ages. I mean, in the book, it's kind of fast. It's just like, okay, he gets killed by the knight, but he has that moment with Eowyn, and you're like, man, and you know, if you read the books, you knew Theoden was going to die.
Right.
But again, Bernard Hill is a great actor, and the way, and you were so invested in him in The Two Towers. And then when he dies in Return of the King, you're like, oh, you knew it was coming, but you didn't want it to. You're like, man, because you wanted him to make it out. You wanted to know if Peter Jackson was going to change that detail and have him live. But it was good, man.
Yeah. Yep.
And when she,
go ahead.
No, I was going to say when Eowyn kills the Witch King. And when her and Pippin kill the Witch King, that's a great scene too. When she chops the head off that thing that it's riding on, and then it's great. Yeah.
When she chopped off the head, I was on like, come to Earth, motherfucker.
Yeah,
I was rooting them on in all my crude glory.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
The Witch King was one of my favorite characters in the series because you didn't see much. He was a flat character, really, but he was just so damn intimidating. Intimidating. And then when they did the scene that was outside the books where he breaks Gandalf's staff. That's one of my favorite scenes in the movie that is just completely a Peter Jackson creation.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this guy is just, and then 5 minutes later he's dead. But you were like, wow, this was a really powerful character. I would have liked to have known more, but Tolkien didn't write more about him, really.
Yeah, he didn't.
That's
he was
the source
just the
material.
head of the Nazgul. Yeah.
But that scene was maybe one of my favorites in all of the series.
Yeah.
The other was from and that's an extended version scene. You don't get that if you just watch the theatrical.
Yeah.
The other one that I liked from this movie that's part of the extended series is where you see Aragorn after the battle performing some of the healing that was talked about in the book. The rumors that a king had returned. And that he had the power to heal, and you'd see, Aragorn going around, trying to do some of the Dunedain, healing. I thought that was a really cool scene. I liked it. It's a long ending. This movie has a long ending.
Yeah, the 5 different endings.
I own it, and I'm happy to watch them at any time. But I remember going to the theater with my oldest friend. We went to go see it. He's been a buddy of mine since kindergarten. He's my next door neighbor now. And we went to go see it, and they throw the ring in the lava, and they escape, and then Frodo says to Sam, "I'm happy to be with you here." At the end of all things, and then it fades to black. And then the light comes back again. And then, the Eagles are with Gandalf. And I'll never forget this. My buddy leaned over with me, goes, "It's not over yet."
Well, because they're such long movies anyway. So,
you probably have to figure that 75% of the people who went to the movies didn't read the book.
Exactly.
They got the source material from the movie. I'm not going to, I don't have time to read 1,000 pages. I'm just going to, once a year, I'm going to go see this 3-hour movie, and that's going to be good. And he was a perfect example of that. He just leaned over and he goes, "There's more?"
Well, if you think about it this way, if they cut the endings a little bit and trimmed it down, they could have shown Solomon's death.
Well, that's time. Well, Peter Jackson said he never liked that chapter where Saruman comes to the Shire and all that, which I think it's a great chapter. But so he didn't film that. So that's why he did the Saruman death scene the way he did, on top of the tower and all that.
Yeah.
Well, it's a solid movie all the same. I mean, our 1 and 2 had 2 out of 3 of them, so
Yeah.
no issues there. That brings us though to the final number 1 of this long, month-long, top 10 list that's taking us quite a while to flesh out. My number 1 has been my number 1 all along. I never changed it. I considered, and John, you picked this, I considered The Wizard of Oz simply for its place in fantasy in terms of its historic setting. But then I thought, something, I don't watch The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Like if it comes on, like I deliberately changed the channel because I'm like, I'm not being freaked out by that green lady and somebody's feet sticking out from under the fucking house and flying monkeys. And I'm like, fuck that. I ain't watching it. So I don't give a shit what your fucking placement is. Fuck your placement. But this movie, on the other hand, I'll watch almost any time that it's on. And I'll watch it several times a year. And I'm happy to watch it in any variation or version that is playing. And my number 1, and I'm just posting the overlay of one particular version of it, is Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol.
There you go.
Oh, okay.
This was before we had decided to do A Christmas Carol for the Christmas movie. This was your idea, John. That wasn't my idea. Right. But there is just, to me, no greater story in terms of fantasy, in terms of humanity, lifting the human spirit, this shrivel-hearted, traumatized old man, who's just shrunken inside of himself. He just, it's like that song about the Grinch, where his heart's like the size of a pea.
His heart is 2 sizes too small. Yeah.
Well, this guy's a lot worse than that, depending on the version that you watch. Yeah. And that's what we were talking about when we did the George C. Scott version. His father didn't love him. His father bore this lifelong resentment against him because his mother died when he was born. Sent him, but every Christmas was ruined for him.
Yeah.
Every Christmas was just ruined for him. He was sent away. He wasn't called for. He had a sister that was allowed to go home and he wasn't. So, I mean, there's all these contributing very human factors as to why this man has become the way he has, what he's turned into. Aside, because it's very easy to say, and we talked about this one, we watched the movie, this guy's just such a dick, but you're like, well, why is he that way?
Yeah.
And you just, these incredible things that happened to him and, how horrible he was the night before in terms of his employee, Cratchit, in terms of his nephew, please come join me and my wife for Christmas dinner. And he's just saying this so dark, like inappropriate, like, out there, dark things, like I'd rather see you in hell, and you're just like, you're my only living relative, what is going on? And so that this miracle of sorts might occur to actually, make him become a human being again, which he wasn't. He wasn't a human being really. And I put the overlay from the Patrick Stewart version, even though that wasn't the one we covered, because there's a scene there that's sort of improvised, I guess, by Stewart when he wakes up from the dream or from the visitations or however you want to categorize it, where he's just, and it sounds like he's having trouble breathing. But what you realize is that he's starting to laugh. And he probably hadn't laughed in so long that like his body doesn't know what to do.
Right. Yeah.
And I remember the first time I saw that and I'm like, wow, and then it just turns into this laugh and you realize that this man probably hasn't laughed in 30 years. And you're just like, holy shit, like that's amazing. And so, I mean, every year I watch it. Every year I'll watch several versions of it. This year was no exception. This year we were privileged to have the opportunity to discuss it on the show. That's my number 1.
Yeah, everybody has their favorite Scrooge's, and everybody has it. I think in terms of the actual movie, the George C. Scott one's probably my favorite. But in terms of Scrooge's, and you can make fun of me for this if you want, my two favorite Scrooges, George C. Scott and Michael Caine in The Muppet Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
Michael Caine is fantastic as Scrooge, because he talks to the Muppets like they're actual actors.
Yeah, he played it dead serious.
Yeah, he does, and he does a fantastic job of it. Those are my favorite two Scrooges.
Now, Mike, being the semi-Dickens expert, because I have Scrooge so many times, the laughing part that he did when he came back on my knees, Jacob, and he's laughing, Dickens actually wrote that.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I haven't read it in so long. Okay.
Yeah.
But I remember also, for every fantasy, a hero has to make a journey. And you're right.
Mm-hmm. Campbell's.
Yeah. And one of the things we never get to cover, because nobody really gets to talk about it that much, is when Dickens wrote the description of Scrooge. Tight-fisted, sharp, solitary as a clam. Nobody said hello to him. A blind man's dog would take his owner across the street so he wouldn't cross by. I mean, these were the descriptions of this man. And to see him, reform in such a way. This is why, I'm not joking. I came real close to making this number one, too. And I think that's why when we were having a problem getting to do Krampus and whatever for the Christmas one, that's why I suggested it. But with Michael Caine too, there's a Dickens historical museum. Yeah, there's a great documentary when they were talking about Dickens himself. Yeah, and they said, "Oh, what's your favorite version of Christmas Carol?" Every one of them said, "Oh, Michael Caine."
Oh, wow!
And they said, "Why?" And they said, "He got it right. He could have made it very they said they loved Albert Finney. He was fun, and they loved it. But it said Michael Caine could have made it like Albert Finney, very much like the and he goes, and he didn't. No, and when Michael Caine got asked why, he said, "Well, I want to reach the children," and that was the point, to get that in their head. So, I mean, the character itself is fantastic as a hero type deal. Yeah. And that's
it's very complex.
Yeah, and it's
very complex.
If you read some of Dickens' notes and stuff, he wanted to make the theme of the story Tiny Tim, because Oliver Twist was such a success. He wanted to go back to that, and he said, "Well, if Tim's this, I got to make a villain." And all of a sudden, he realized just how strong this villain could be. It's one of the few times the villain is the protagonist. And I'm sorry, I still love that fact. It came out in 1843. 12% of London celebrated Christmas. 1848, it went up to 90%. And not because of religion. They said they didn't want to be called Scrooge. They closed their business on Christmas and things like that. Yeah. I mean, that's the power of a character.
Yeah,
one of the most beloved characters probably in all of English literature.
Yeah.
Ebenezer Scrooge, and obviously so closely associated, directly associated with Christmas.
Yeah.
The timing of it is fantastic in that at a time when people's hearts usually are at their most open in Western society, here comes this character, that fits in perfectly with, the ideals, that you want.
Yeah. And I reading it, it's funny because it's a ghost story too, really. I mean, it starts out, the first line is Jacob Marley was dead to begin with. Yeah. It's like, what a Christmas! Like, how's that a Christmas thing? What an opening.
Well, but because the next line is that if you don't understand this, then nothing wonderful can ever come from
exactly.
the rest of the story. So they automatically counterbalance the first line with the second line. And you're just like, okay, that because it starts out in a horror kind. You're like, oh, he's dead, but they're like, if you don't understand that, then nothing wonderful will ever come of this story. And you're like, okay.
I did one version of Christmas Carol that was told like from a child's bedroom. Like the way it was set up, the child was sick and a bunch of actors who were going to go open Scrooge did it as a read through, and they've taken the curtains off put in one for the Ghost of Christmas Present. But when they got to the point where they turned around and went, Marley was as dead as a doornail. The one kid goes, "What's a doornail?" And the whole actors went, what is a doornail? I actually looked it up. I know I found out what the definition of a doornail.
Don't start. You're ruining my Christmas spirit, because this reminds me of the time I went to go see Endgame, and some woman and her 5-year-old kid came and sat next to me, and every 3 seconds he had a question. What happened?
Oh,
what does that mean? What did he do that for? What did shut up? I'm gonna chuck your little ass down the stairs. I almost pulled a Scrooge myself. You little fuck. God, I fucking heard it. He ruined the whole movie. I waited like a year to see that fucking movie, and the little bastard ruined the whole thing for me.
That happened during one of the Lord of the Rings movies. I took my dad to see it. We're sitting there, and there's a guy behind us. His girlfriend must not have spoken English, because he's like mumbling the whole time, like translating for her. I'm like, come on, dude. Like, what the heck?
This is what back rows are for.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I heard somebody say that in a movie once. This is what the back rows for, man.
What the fucking Blu-ray is for, with subtitles, asshole.
Exactly.
All right. I tell you what, guys, it's been 2 hours.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I think that this. No. I think that this is as good a place as any, actually, to close it down.
Sounds good to me.
My thanks to finishing out this list to John, Mr. Fantasy, Alvarez, to Brom Bones. We got this done tonight, and I enjoy talking about these movies. Some of them I haven't seen, maybe some of the ones that each of us have said, either haven't seen or, but that's cool.
You're giving me a list of movies. I'm like, I haven't seen that in a while. Let me go watch it now.
Yeah. So, it all works. We will be back next week on Wednesday with some serious sci-fi horror, Event Horizon, with Sam Neill and Lawrence Fishburne, Larry Fishburne, I think he was back then. This was before he became Lawrence and started speaking with gravitas, all the time. And then we're moving on to Thursday with Stir of Echoes, which is also a serious fucking paranormal / ghost film with the fucking immortal Kevin Bacon, who just can't seem. The guy's been in the zone for like 30 years. The guy just can't do anything wrong. I have never seen a career like this. Just nothing. There's nothing this guy does that.
He did Hollow Man.
I didn't see Hollow Man, so I'm not going to offer an opinion on it.
That wasn't that good.
40 years. Yeah.
What?
40 years. He was in Animal House. He came out in 78.
All right, 40 years then. 40 years. Yeah, 40 plus then. 40 plus. Yeah, guy's in the zone, man.
And
all right, my thanks to both of you, and we'll see you all next week. And in the meantime, don't waste your time with bullshit. Good night.
All right.